I've been known to make fun of European computer games. In the mid-80s, Japanese game developers were building the console industry, creating action games that worked in the living room. In the US, computer game developers were pushing the boundaries of technology in their strategy games and simulations, and leading the way with RPGs. And over in Europe, they were doing their own thing. I'm mentioning this because although Nightlore is based on one of the UK's cornerstone computer games, they don't deserve blame for this one. This painfully awful port is all on Japan, or Tosei and Jalico, both of whom were making their Disk System debuts, and both were still in that phase where they were dumping out anything fast and cheap. This is what the original Nightlore looked like. It was developed by Ultimate Play the Game, and whose staff would quit a few years later to form Rare. It pioneered this isometric view used for platforming, which would become weirdly popular with European games. The concept behind the computer game is that you're a knight who's been bitten by a werewolf, and you have 40 days in which to make a cure by collecting random items from the wizard's castle and dropping them in a cauldron. It has a big 128-room map, and there's a bit of randomness in the items to keep you replaying. You have to do a bit of puzzle solving and platforming as you go. I think Nightlore is a bit rough to play, but honestly, for 1984, I can see why it caught on. I explained Nightlore to you so that when you see the Famicom Disk System, you can understand how badly they murdered it. In the Disk System Nightlore, you're some kid who's been cursed to turn into a werewolf. And to deal with that, you have to collect random items and return them to a room. Unlike the computer game, though, the environments are smaller, they're contained in a very tiny area, there's very little puzzle solving to be done, and the game actively makes it more annoying to play. The first big issue is the control scheme. Since the Disk System Nightlore continues the isometric perspective of the original, you have to move your character on diagonals. To handle that on the Disk System, they want you to rotate your controller 45 degrees. So up makes you walk to the northwest, left goes to the southwest, and so on. Hitting the B button will make you jump, and you always jump a fixed distance. And the A button will put down any item that you currently have selected. There are 10 items you can find, but they all do the exact same thing, so I won't bother describing them. You have 3 inventory slots, and if you walk over an item and the selected inventory slot is full, then you just discard what was there and take the new item. You can rotate through your inventory slots by pressing select. Pressing A will put down whatever is in your active inventory slot, and it'll act as a platform, lifting you up a little bit. That's useful for getting to out-of-reach places, and bypassing most of the challenge in the game. Why go through the complicated platforming challenge when you could just drop an item and climb up? When you find the room to drop off the items at, there will be a little guy in the corner, and he'll be flashing what he wants. Take that item and drop it in the center of the room, and he'll change to a new item. Do this enough times, and you'll advance to the next stage. Every stage only has 11 rooms, 1 room for each item, and 1 for the drop-off point. There's a couple more things you need to know about the drop-off point. First, is the only thing that I found that's affected by being in werewolf form. You turn into the werewolf when night falls, and the transformation to and from causes you to get stuck in place for several seconds. That can make you vulnerable to things that are wandering around. When you're in werewolf form and go to the drop-off room, then the magic chases you down to kill you, and you can't drop the item off. You have 80 days in which to complete each stage, and time flows very quickly. You won't be able to get through 2 rooms without transformation. What that means is that you're going to spend a lot of time hanging around outside of the drop-off room, waiting to turn human again. And sometimes you won't even want to go into the room while you're human, because you could wolf out before you get a chance to drop off your item. Another issue with dropping off the items is it makes the rest of your inventory disappear. So no stocking up on things and dropping off multiple items at once. You have to backtrack and go through these same rooms over and over and over again. The same very boring rooms. There are some traps that are very poorly rendered. Most things sitting around on the floor will kill you. Even stuff that looks kind of harmless will kill you. And the long rectangles marked out on the floor are conveyor belts. You have no way of knowing what direction they're going in until you step on them, though. And the squares on the floor are pits, but those don't kill you, they just drop you off in another room. With the absurd amount of backtracking, it takes a very long time to clear a stage. 15 to 20 minutes is about what you could expect. There are 9 stages total, and you can save your progress by ending things when you get a game over. Now this game winds up being excruciatingly long. There's one more nasty trick it can pull on you when it comes to collecting items. After the first stage, one of the items can get replaced with a warp. If you need that particular item, then you have to go into the warp, and the warp will take you to the previous stage, where you have to pass through all of those rooms again, and collect the needed item there, then return through the warp, and drop the item off in your correct stage. It's just an excruciatingly dragged out situation. The monsters that you'll encounter have weirdly inconsistent behaviors, sometimes reacting when you get close, sometimes not doing anything, and sometimes changing their patterns after the first time they move through the room. It's hard to do anything with consistency here. You have 5 lives, but it's easy to chew through them if you get into a bad spot. Unsurprisingly, Night Lore is not well regarded in Japan. I mean, it's really not well regarded in Japan. A 1989 poll in Daigurin, a book published by Family Computer magazine acting as a guide to games, rated Night Lore as the worst game out there. Now, I wouldn't put it dead last. I can think of other Tosei Jalico joints that are worse. But it is really bad. I mean, it's so bad, it made me compliment a UK computer game. It's hard to get much worse than that.